From traffic on the Isle of Palms connector to parking on the Isle of Palms to the search for a new fire chief, I talk one-on-one with Isle of Palms City Council member Randy Bell for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Randy Bell, welcome to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Obviously, you are a member of the Isle of Palms City Council, and you just mentioned to me off air, like, listen, you've done Zoom a lot over the past year. What has it been like for you to be a council member over the past year or so?
It's been, well, probably a little more than any of us bargained for. I think we had over 30 special meetings for COVID, and we've just returned to in-person meetings over the last 30 to 60 days. So I don't think anyone could have predicted the number of council meetings, and frankly, the amount of time spent on Zoom calls. So, yeah, you're experts.
What is the quality of life right now on the city of Isle of Palms?
The quality of life. I don't, honestly, because I don't, we're just now seeing a return to what I would call normalcy in terms of crowds. I'm going to answer it two different ways. The quality of life in general is always good on the Isle of Palms. It's, frankly, it's a privilege to live here. The constant, if you will, of bantering that we see on social media and the positioning of the city that, in my opinion, is largely inaccurate, has certainly added a dimension to council members' quality of life, but I don't think overall that it's had a massive impact on the community itself. But, I'm not going to complain about quality of life when you live on an island at the beach. So,
yes, indeed. Well, I have to jump into the issues and talk about it.
Please do. Yeah.
Okay. You probably seen this earlier last week, but as you know, attorney Josh Huser of Huser Legal Counsel LLC filed a lawsuit against the city of Isle of Palms in the Charleston County Court of Common Pleas. The lawsuit seeks a court order requiring public disclosure of electronic messages between the Isle of Palms mayor and city council members from their private electronic devices. Huser Legal Counsel LLC, that is, has already obtained copies of some of the group text messages. One such group message included the Isle of Palms mayor, even city council member, and the Isle of Palms city administrator discussing city business over text message while a city council meeting was live and in progress on August 25th, 2020. He says this, quote, the attorney, the Isle of Palms officials seem to have established a pattern and practice to communicate with each other in a way designed to eliminate or minimize disclosure of their communications to the public. The behavior of the Isle of Palms mayor and city council is a slap in the face of the public disclosure laws and the constitutions and obviously the constituents of the Isle of Palms who deserve more respect and transparency from elected leaders. Let me ask you this, Randy. Why are you guys actually discussing city business on private electronic devices?
To my knowledge, we're not.
Okay.
And by the way, I've read
yes.
I've read all the FOIA
right.
response.
Yes.
Address the first issue. Sitting on council and communicating electronically, that's not something I'm aware of. So I know there's been discussion. And I, by the way, I'm not on social media, so I don't, other than folks sending it to me, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to it. A lot of the FOIA discovery that I read was back and forth scheduling of COVID meetings, which I got to tell you, it didn't seem like a week went by when we didn't have one or two meetings reacting to the governor's orders. And a lot of communication, are you available? Are you available? That's fine. There were other comments in there about communications between the mayor and the city administrator. I read those. We don't live in a perfect world, but, when I hear accusations that we're sitting non-transparently communicating during city council meetings, not to my knowledge. So I don't know what to say. I don't personally put a lot of stock in it. I think we have very much attempted to be as transparent as possible. There's been complaints about we don't share the recordings of executive sessions. Well, there are no recordings of executive sessions, and by law, there's no, we don't have a transcription of what occurs in executive session. We don't make decisions in executive session, and there is no record. That's per law, right? So other than that, I can tell you personally, I don't put anything in writing that I wouldn't wish to be discoverable. And there are times when I put things in writing because I do wish for them to be discoverable. But, frankly, for me, that's a byproduct of 44 years in the corporate world and understanding what those responsibilities are and transferring those responsibilities into this public environment. I don't feel as a council that we're not transparent. So it's, why that lawsuit was filed and why, Josh Huser has the beliefs. He's certainly been on social media for a while claiming this. Beyond that, I don't have a comment. I don't know what to tell him.
Well, let me get back into the issues. There's so many things going on in the island, so we'll probably be here for.
You think we got issues?
Well, let me ask you this: how much residential taxpayer money is being used by the city on actual projects?
On actual projects, I don't know. I'm going to ask you a question. What do you mean by actual projects? I mean, we have a lot of projects.
In those lot of projects, how much residential money is actually being spent on that?
The majority of it. I mean, relatively small budget, but if you want to go through the projects, we've got a marina project that's in the neighborhood of $4.5 million for dock rehabilitation, based on the lease terms that we have with the tenant. The city's responsible for. Frankly, you can call it rehab. It's pretty much a replacement of the city stocks. We have another, near-term $3.5 million plus committed to drainage projects. We have always, smaller projects that, sometimes co-funded by the county and other agencies. But we just completed a rehabilitation of a poorly built public safety building, which was in the neighborhood of $6 million. So, are we sitting flush with cash reserves because they're not allocated? No, we by law have to have a balanced budget. And we have in my tenure, which is now going on 4 years, we've had nothing but major projects with city taxpayer money going towards those. I will add one qualifier. I think, as you know, tax money or accommodations tax money must be spent on things that are shared with the public. So if you look at the recreation center, the marina, those are, what I say, co-funded with accommodations tax, but, that is all part of the budget process and just the way that we march forward.
Speaking of which, is the budget and the expenditures actually posted online?
It is. I will say I always have issues with the quality and accessibility of information. And, I'll jokingly use the analogy I've used with the city administrator. It's like somebody saying, hey, there's a bear in the room. Why didn't you tell me? Well, you didn't ask. I think one of the problems with, small cities and, we don't have an IT department. We outsource IT. If you know the information is there, you can find it. If you don't know the information is there, it's very difficult. I field a lot of constituent questions. Where can I find the information? It's difficult. You do have to know it's there. But if you look at IOP.net, all the budget information is there. I will say this in compliments to Desiree Fergoso. The accessibility and the quality of information that's on our website far exceeds what it was prior to her tenure. And we worked hard to put the information out there. Is it perfect? In my world, I'd love to have word context where I can ask for something and it shows up and takes me right to that point within the website. That's not there. Having said that, I never fail to return residents' inquiries and get them the information. I say never, at least to my knowledge. I think most of us try to be as transparent and forward in providing information as possible.
And let me get back to, obviously, the budget. Let me ask you this. Why is 3/4 of the entire budget revenue going to increase the new Wild Dunes Hotel?
I don't even know where that statement comes from.
Oh, it's a question. Why is 3/4 of the city's entire budget revenue going to increase the new Wild Dunes Hotel? Is a new hotel coming, right?
Well, the new hotel is open, but that's not a city project, and our budget monies are not going to the hotel. So I don't understand that. Nor do I know where the information came from. The hotel.
It came from my research, but yeah, okay. When you look at the budget revenue, what is in there? What's in there?
That's a very broad. I mean, there's general fund money. There's money that's targeted to specific projects, but there's no money targeted to the hotel. The hotel is with a private residential development. And if I may, just to add to that, the question we always get is, why did you guys approve the hotel? We didn't. In 1977, the terms of that PRD was set. With the density for that development, it was determined, at this point by Low Corporation. So they had the rights to, and they built a hotel. We are not funding the hotel.
Okay, let me get back to the marina. You talked about that earlier. Did you all, in your mind, overspent on the renovation of that particular marina?
Okay, I'm going to separate into two parts that question.
All right.
Let's go back to the first part. For whatever reason, the prior city council gave Marina Joint Ventures a lease until 2045. Still blows my mind how anyone thought that was a great idea. And I think at the peak of when the Morgan Creek Grill, Tidal Wave Water Sports, and the store was operating, I think the most revenue that was brought in was about $435,000. We have averaged over 10 years, over $800,000 a year, offsetting tax dollars to fund that marina. When we went to bid, as we should on all of those properties, on the Morgan Creek Grill, that was a separate entity. That was done on a triple net lease by private developers, and the monies that are going into the renovation, and I say renovation, it's almost gutting and rebuilding that, are 100% private monies. There's a small section you'll see in the city in the Ways and Means meeting tonight where the city is co-funding some repaving of a square of the parking lot. But beyond that, that is private investment dollars between $2.5 and $3 million on a lease that coincides for the next now 24 years that would terminate at the conclusion of all the lease marinas. So we had a legal obligation on the docks, and that is literally why we're spending over $4 million on the dock renovations, because we have a legal obligation to do so. I think we were very prudent in the way that we addressed the restaurant. The building was falling apart. It's owned by the city. That building will revert back to city complete control in 2045.
Yeah.
Long answer.
Oh, no worries. Just wanted to get your side out to the public. But you talk about legal. Did you all, in your mind, overspend on attorney fees for this Tidal Wave lawsuit?
I'm not going to comment on pending litigation. I don't think we have a choice but to spend the legal money. It's the city's position. It's certainly my position that we voted in council to not renew that lease, and we'll let the courts decide. Yes, legal fees are legal fees. You don't often have a choice.
Oh, no worries. Any word on the OCRM report for Tidal Wave?
The OCRM report, I mean, any of those, questionable items are all of public record. So, we don't control DHEC OCRM. There's no, to my knowledge, no current issues with OCRM. We're simply in litigation over the lease term.
Right. And any word from DHEC, by the way?
I don't, there's no need for any word from DHEC. There were some specific issues at the time with both the Army Corps of Engineers and DHEC, which have been resolved. One was the incursion into the center line, which the Army Corps of Engineers won't allow you have objects protruding out into the intercoast. Well, that was resolved back, I don't know, it's probably been a year and a half ago now. But no, we have an issue. We have a pending litigation with them, as it is the city's belief and council's belief, which, by the way, council has voted 9-0
Right.
on all issues other than the lease extension.
Let me turn over to the search for the fire chief. I know that you all are reportedly paying a consultant to help the city hire your new fire chief, that is. What else is the city and the council overspending on?
What are we overspending on? I don't think we're overspending. So, that's a leading question. What are we overspending on? If I had my druthers, it wouldn't be the city's money paying for the rehabilitation of the docks, but we don't have a choice. And again, every project, and I think, the saying that if we had unlimited funds, we would address, by the way, with OCR and DAC,
right,
correcting the drainage problems on the city faster. But it's a permitting process. It is a large investment. This island has the challenges, as any coastal community, of rising tides, if you will, sewer infrastructure, and I think but water and sewer is handled separately from city council. But we've had a lot of challenges that I think I'll look back on this council tenure, and you had your first question adding COVID into that mix. Sewer, the public safety building, the marina, the replacement of key personnel. It's been a challenging 3.5 years, and I think we should all look back with pride at the way we both handled the budget and addressed some of the major issues and concerns of the city.
I'm gonna get back to that in a minute, but would the city be in favor of creating a finance task force to research comparable both revenue and expenses from outside sources to assist with the budget process in the future?
I can't comment on what the city would be in favor of. Do I think we have an issue there? I do not think we have an issue. I think I'll be very complimentary of the current chairman of Ways and Means. I think Philip Pounds has done an outstanding job of guiding the budget process for the city. My first 2 years on council, I was vice chair of Ways and Means, so I spent a significant amount of time trying to work on and improve the process and take a more strategic view. It's real easy to count the money. It's a lot more difficult to take a strategic view of what we do over time, how we go about it. Some of the changes when I came in, I was absolutely not in favor of taking $1 million in cash and buying a fire truck. Not when you can lease a fire truck for less than 3% interest, right? So, we've taken different approaches to how we spend the money, and try to on an island, I call it the rainy day fund. Hopefully it's not the hurricane fund, but to be able to put money aside to address unforeseen circumstances. I think we've done a much better job than prior administrations in addressing those issues.
Can you share with the public the source of the city's income breakdown?
I don't have it in front of me, Quintin, and honestly, I sit on the council meetings now, not being chairman or vice chairman of Ways and Means, and I look at the numbers. The things that I look for is, are we on track to what we budgeted pre and post COVID? I mean, we've taken a very conservative approach to budgeting.
Right.
I don't think it's a surprise to anybody. Hospitality revenues are down because restaurants and hotels have been closed. Our ATAX money exceeds expectations because I think a lot of people are doing, I don't want to call them staycations, but there's certainly less people getting on airplanes and a lot of people driving to the Isle of Palms to enjoy what we have to offer. And those revenues have been a real positive in terms of city budgeting. And hindsight, I'd go back and say the conservative approach was the right approach. But we're seeing light at the end of that tunnel. And frankly, when you look at Memorial Day, I think you're going to see an influx of people and people happy to take the mask off. Not that I'm recommending, but to take the mask off, come to the beach and enjoy the beach. So I think we're doing very well.
I'm going to get back to that in a second too, but let me get back to the search for the fire chief. On the search for the fire chief, can you all by chance rehire Ann Graham temporarily and hire her to help with the hiring process for the new fire chief and to actually pay her?
Well, you can always say yes if you could find Ann Graham. She's probably in her camper. What I'd be doing if I were Ann Graham right now. I know.
Yeah, great lady.
Yeah, if she's smart, she's turned her cell phone off. Ann was involved in the front end part of the process where we, created a short list, if you will, and was very engaged in that process. Right now, the only comment I've got is I think, from my perspective, and I am chairman of public safety, it's working well with Chief Cornett overseeing and letting things settle down. And, frankly, understanding what the community needs. We've appointed both Hathaway and Smith as deputy fire chiefs. They're both highly competent people. We have a highly competent police chief. And, if you take the holistic view, it's public safety. And, I think we're taking a deep breath. We're not currently out searching for candidates or doing anything differently. We're going to get through this season, see where we are, and decide, whether there's a need to independently go for a fire chief.
But let me ask you this way. How will you change the city code on hiring in the future?
How would I change this out? Personally, and I think each of us have an individual position. I think council is not the appropriate vehicle to make all these personnel decisions. It's a bit ironic. I've sat on, during this hiring cycle, both public safety and the personnel committee.
Right.
I'm not the most qualified person to decide how a direct report to the city administrator should, what that person should be, what all those attributes. I have opinions, and they're nothing more than that. I would give the city administrator more authority over those hiring decisions. In this case, she has to have a team that she's comfortable with. And she should be making a recommendation to council, and council decide whether to support that recommendation instead of council making a determination. And in my mind, working the process backwards. I think there's times when, city council is a board of directors. We're not the managers of the city. And I think the more that we can get back to being a board of directors and not the managers, the more effective the overall administration of the city will be.
You talk about process, let me turn to the big
Yeah.
elephant in the room, and that is parking. Let me just ask you this.
This parking issue?
I know so much going on, but I thought about this the other day, but why is there no public parking on 42nd Avenue when they're planning to spend public funds for a boardwalk?
Well, first of all, let me answer this working backwards. If spending is roughly $50,000 in public funds, it's coming from a Greenbelt fund. If the determinant as to whether 42nd Avenue is resident, non-resident parking is dependent on whether we have e-pay or MobiMats, they could certainly keep the money and not do e-pay. Right? This community has bent over backwards to provide parking to beach visitors. So when I hear we're denying access, it just, this is one of those things that is incredible, right? We've had free parking on Palm, and by the way, 42nd Avenue, it's one of the few places that residents can actually take their golf carts, go down there and find a place to park that's not overrun with beach visitors and largely day trippers, particularly on busy weekends. Palm Boulevard is, short of the 30 to 60 day shutdown during COVID, has always been open with free parking. The city owns, at city expense, about 700 parking places, right? So, I forget the year the property was bought, but it has nothing to do with Scdot. It was at the discretion and foresight of prior council to buy parking. So we have parking behind the public safety building. We have the lot adjacent to the county park. Roughly 700 parking places. We have roughly 8 times the amount of parking required by DHEC for beach access. So now we have Scdot, and I'm sure you're going to ask the question about S40, and S40, which is coming from a separate agency, saying that we're not providing beach access. Simply not true. We've never closed the beach. We closed access during COVID under Governor McMaster's I would call it insistence that local governments are better prepared to make local public safety decisions. And that's all we've done. But unfortunately, we have a vocal group in a tri-county area of roughly 900,000 people that think that 5 square miles is growing. And it is a balance between residential quality of life and beach access. We simply can't accommodate in large mass the number of people that choose to come to the beach. And as a person that grew up at the beach, you know what? You get there by 10 in the morning, you find a parking place, and if you don't, guess what? You're driving around going, wow, where do I park? I should have gotten up earlier. And, it's very tough. And it is tough to listen to misplaced criticism. Folks think that, we should be able to park in everybody's yard. We should be able to completely intrude on the residential quality of life. But first and foremost, this is our community that we have an obligation to keep safe for children playing, for visitors. And, I'm sure you'll hear over the next week or so the city's position on S40. I think it's gross government overreach and pandering. And it is interesting when the surrounding counties and cities say, I think S40 is a great idea. So recommendation to Charleston County, you got a lot, make it free. They've got a huge lot on the island. And like I said, we offer lots of parking. We're not trying to deny anybody beach access, but we are trying to find a balance with residential quality of life that frankly, it's very difficult. Very difficult. We're not growing land.
And I'm going to talk to you more about that in a few minutes, but let me ask you this. How were public funds used to nourish a section of the private beach with no public access and water wild dunes?
Okay, that's interesting. And I'm going to have to stretch my memory a little bit here, because that was my first year on council.
Okay.
Right. So there is public parking down to 57th Avenue, landside only. There has been, and it's Scdot, it's not the city. There is no parking on the beach side from 41st to 57th. Okay. North of 57th, it's not a private beach. Anybody can go on the beach. How far you want to walk and carry your chairs and go down to the beach. So there is no private beach at Wild Dunes. When we went for funding for beach renourishment, and again, I'll apologize for not having the exact numbers, but it was in the $16 million range. It was a lot. It was co-funded by the state, the city, and Wild Dunes. Wild Dunes residents contributed X amount of money. We were denied, if my memory serves correct, around $3 million from the state because they deemed there was no public access to the beaches within Wild Dunes. That was a state decision that I think was rightful. I mean, I can't go in. I don't live in Wild Dunes, by the way, so I can't go in there and just choose to park somewhere and go to their beach either, even as a resident of the island. So, we gave up about $3 million. A lot of that sand was dredged and pumped to that end of the island, and there's a real simple reason for it. I don't know if you've noticed the landmass between Breach Inlet. Pretty soon we might as well join hands with Sullivan's Island, because I think a lot of that sand is probably sitting down there on that sandbar now. But, the idea was to, place the sand where it would do the most accretive value over time and last longer. And I remember in the council meeting said, well, how long is this sand going to last? And, the question is, I don't know, when's the next hurricane, right? But I think people need to understand we're not funding Wild Dunes private development in any way, shape, or form. And that was, a lot of state oversight in that project and where the money was spent. And again, it was not north of 57th Avenue. It was where the beaches are fully open to everyone.
And I was just over on both islands and Breach Inlet a few weeks ago, and I noticed all of that.
Sullivan's Island.
Yeah, and I walked down Palm Boulevard and all. Yeah. It was one of those busy weekdays when everything was going on, but it was good to see people out. But let me go back to the Charleston County Greenbelt Fund. Are these more public funds going towards a private section of the beach?
The private section being where?
On the Isle of Palms.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, there are no private sections of the beach for Isle of Palms.
Okay. And I have learned too that if you want to park and meet, say for instance, a handicapped family member or friend, there's no public parking at the access. Why?
That's an interesting question. So first of all, let me go back to handicap parking.
Okay.
I fought for the addition on 42nd of, we now have 2 handicap parking places, and I've met with Secretary Hall. I think our handicap access between, largely between 20th and 42nd is awful. She knows my opinion on that. We have 2 handicap spots at 42nd. Those are free to anybody. They're not residential restricted. They are handicap parking places, right? So if a family member wants to meet that vehicle there, they can still park on Palm Boulevard and walk like all fully enabled people can. There are no handicap parking places between that and 20th Avenue, right? So something you're in the process of addressing with Secretary Hall is additional handicap spaces along Palm Boulevard. It is, there's a couple things to think about. It's not as simple as, we just like to have more handicap parking places. And I don't know how many times you've tried to randomly choose a beach access point. But, sometimes they're flooded. For handicap access, you've got to have full ADA compliance, right? So just having a parking place, people don't want to come sit in their car on Palm Boulevard. They want to go to the beach. So we are looking at, in broader terms, what can we do, whether it's city money or whether it's those combination public, other monies available like 42nd Avenue. That whole controversy on building that EPEG decking was to provide as much ADA compliant access down to the high tide mark as we possibly can. And that project will commence. There's a vote on it tonight on Ways and Means. But, you got to be able to get to the beach. The beach paths themselves are an issue, both in the public safety, recreation committees that we're all looking at. How do we provide better enabled access between all those points? So it's not as simple as just the handicap parking places, but what we, and a big collective we, state, the city, the county, can do better working together to provide disabled access.
Now, does that meet the guidelines for public parking available within 500 feet of the landward terminations of beach access paths?
We are compliant to all of the DHEC rules. Like I said, we can't breathe without Scdot approval. And I'll tie this back to S40. A lot of the verbiage in S40 has been in place with Scdot. I mean, we don't put any signage up without their approval on state roads. We don't change anything without their approval on state roads. So, I would encourage the state to take a broader look at overall access. To your point, how many parking places per beach access point? Like I said, we're 7.5 to 8 times over the DHEC regulations, but DHEC is not Scdot. Right. And it is interesting because as a council member, we've always focused on how are we compliant to DHEC? How are we doing relative to beach access and providing parking? And it's our view that as a beach community, we have exceeded every demand and bent over backwards to do that. And I'll jump ahead and answer a question that you may or may not ask. The one criticism that I think is a legitimate criticism of this council, we got out in front of the elimination of landside parking on Palm Boulevard. That's been going on. Frankly, that discussion was predating my council tenure. And it just happened that it was topical as COVID hit, right? So we were in the process of looking at potentially eliminating landside parking on Palm Boulevard, knowing that we would still be roughly 3 times over the DHEC requirements for beach access parking. COVID hit, we shut down that landside parking. I'll go back to any of those decisions and tie them back to things that the public is not aware of. We were monitoring COVID count in our sewage treatment facilities. We were looking at, what was happening to virus content in every way possible. And we drove the COVID numbers down on this island significantly while we watched the rise across the bridge in Mount Pleasant of the COVID numbers, right? So it wasn't, it wasn't done arbitrarily. It was done with a tremendous amount of thought and best intent during some difficult decision making. Like I said, we had coincident elimination of landside parking at a time that was most inopportune. When people said you're denying our rights to come to the beach, we could have done a better job at that time.
But let me just jump right into it, and let me ask you another question here. Why has the Isle of Palms installed more residential-only parking signs after the 2015 SCDOT agreement?
Why have we installed more? I don't believe we have installed more.
And prior to all of this, and prior to yeah,
a couple things. The city, paid Stantec a lot of money for parking studies back. This predates my time on council, but I was paying attention. The city had the foresight to understand that, I may have noticed there's a population boom around here, right? More and more people wanting to come to the beach. How do we ensure some residential quality of life and have a plan that SCDOT and the city believe is in the best interest of everybody? That plan was approved by then Secretary of Transportation. It was heartily endorsed. You've probably seen the letters. Deputy Secretary at the time was Secretary Hall. And they were commending the city on what a wonderful job we've done with a parking plan that had the foresight to anticipate problems and provide something still compliant to the needs of the state. At that time, we put signage up that said this is resident-only parking. And, we did, paper passes, that residents could, hand to guests for parking in their property. We changed those so that they were reusable, so that they weren't just getting thrown away. The two changes that I can recall since then, and mostly during my tenure, we went to parallel parking on Palm Boulevard. That didn't work so well because it was supposed to be single density parking. You get into a discussion of, how far are the encroachments, what's private property, what's public property. We've seen it 4 deep, which, back during when the beaches first opened after COVID, it was 4 deep. I don't know how the 2 interior lanes of cars could ever get out. It was a nightmare for emergencies. I think we've all acknowledged that parallel parking didn't work so well. We tried it. The other change was to the times and year round, right? So we said, look, we don't have a tourist season anymore that is, sort of Memorial Day to Labor Day. We are heavily visited year round, right? I think times have changed enough that, between the population growth and the issues facing the city, this is a destination year round. We said our rules ought to be year round. So we did that. And residential parking is from 9 till 6 o'clock. Right? There was a discussion at one time of 24 hours a day. You got to look at the unintended consequences. What does that really do? Not just to residents and non-residents. And we did not move forward with that. But we've not increased residential signs. We are within the boundaries of the 2015 approved managed beach parking plan.
And let me ask you this. What do you think the SCDOT will do about parking north of 40th Avenue and access to Wild Dunes?
They can't do anything relative to access to Wild Dunes. They have the same jurisdiction they've always had to 57th Avenue. Wild Dunes is a private residential development that is gated and frankly accessible. Somebody wants to go to a restaurant or use the golf facilities, whatever, you get a pass at the gate, you go in. I'm not aware of people being denied access, and that includes residents who don't live in Wild Dunes. But this premise that SCDOT is going to change Wild Dunes is, frankly, it's ludicrous. Not going to happen.
Now, let me ask you this too, Randy. Can you have open parking from Beach Inlet North on Ocean Boulevard and Palm Boulevard without obstructions, perpendicular connector roads, and parking meters?
Okay, can you ask that one more time?
Yes, sir. Can you have open parking from Beach Inlet North on Ocean Boulevard and Palm Boulevard without obstructions, perpendicular connector roads, and parking meters?
Okay, I'm going to try to break that down into component pieces. Okay. So there is no Ocean Boulevard parking from Beach Inlet to, to Front Beach in essence, right? That is a covenant deed restriction that's been in place, and I'm not assessing whether it's legally sufficient or not, but it's a vestige of the beach company's covenants to those deeded property owners along the beach, right? So you don't see parking on Ocean Boulevard. You do have parking in the cross avenues there, right? Which is the same free parking that you see in other non-residentially restricted areas. In that world of what you could have, the city has had, more than one discussion about whether or not the community could seek public parking along Ocean Boulevard, and it's been the city's position that getting into arguments over the validity and legal viability of the covenants along Ocean Boulevard is not a good endeavor for the city to pursue. We did just expand with Secretary Hall the amount of currently free parking at Breach Inlet. And that was all redesigned. And again, I'll stand corrected if my numbers are wrong, but it's roughly 30 parking places due to the reconfiguration at Breach Inlet that are fully open to the public. Nothing has changed in those cross streets. When I hear things like, encroachments, people putting up obstructions, nothing in S40 changes what Scdot was able to do in terms of those obstructions, right? They've always had the ability to remove obstructions. You can get into other issues about, previously issued encroachment permits and things like that. But and I had this discussion with Secretary Hall. Removing obstructions, so somebody wants to purposely obstruct parking, they've always had the ability to remove those obstructions. Nothing changes. And I think for the most part, people aren't putting things out there to just try to block, right? There's been instances where somebody will plant plants, somebody will put telephone poles, but those abilities for Scdot on state control roads have been in place. The city hasn't done anything to codify the legitimacy in doing those activities.
And let me get back to now. Obviously, you know all about it. Scdot proposed increased parking on the island, and Secretary Hall basically backed away from canceling the 2015 plan. Do you think she will not pursue more parking on side streets and modify that 2015 plan?
I can't speak for Secretary Hall. I can only speak for the city's position. We believe we're well within our rights. If you compare our beach access, and I'll go back to the 8 times with DHEC, and my troubled areas around S40, it is targeting barrier islands. So the language was removed stating barrier islands. That's nice, you remove the language, so tell me what it applies to other than barrier islands. The Grand Strand is predominantly paid parking along the beach, approved by Scdot. So, why would Senator Grooms choose to target? And I don't know if you saw his Facebook post. I've certainly had enough people send it to me, calling it the Isle of Palms beach law. It is political pandering at its purest. I think it is grossly out of line with home rule. And we have a right as a community to ascertain what we believe to be in the best interest of the community and public safety. Leaving this island on a busy weekend can take 2 hours. So between the restriping of the connector, which was equally ludicrous, I don't know of any residents that think that was a good plan to remove this center emergency lane. And by the way, you should come on a weekend.
I'll come run over there because I'm a runner.
Run. You use that 3-foot lane in the middle. Maybe you can take a moped to the hospital. This targeting of Isle of Palms as if we're unique. I don't know. As a council or as a city, how we could be more accommodating, short of just telling everybody, by the way, let's just open the whole community up, because our existence is so that we can be your parking lot, right? And I will tell you, this council and city administration, that's just simply not going to happen. So when, hopefully there's and by the way, I will say my personal discussions and administrators with Secretary Hall have been productive and cordial and professional, right? So I don't cast any dispersion on her behavior certainly with me personally or with Desiree. we're looking at the issues. We're working through the issues. We believe our 2015 plan is solid. Whether people want to continue to push and say, "Hey, remove it," there's an ultimate answer. It's court, right? I mean, it could wind up through the years, and we know these court processes don't take overnight. But I don't think it's necessary. I think at the end of the day, we're a state with a strong belief, and I appreciate very much our Representative Bustos' position on home rule that's been stated. During these legislative sessions, you're going to tell one community that home rule doesn't apply. I just that'd be interesting if it ever came to a legal challenge. But as a community, we have a solid parking plan, and we're doing everything we can to ensure that people have beach access. And we're limited in the available parking, and that's just, I think it's total 1,700 parking places that we have available.
And let me ask you I got two more questions for you, Randy, but where should speed humps be on Palm Boulevard, added on Palm Boulevard?
This is kind of funny, and most folks, thanks to the off-island groups, have had the courtesy of publishing council members' home addresses. But yeah, it's been done. I don't say that broadly, but I live on 41st, right? So I get to watch the fire trucks. I've had this discussion with Ann Graham. It's like, God forbid, no speed bumps. Man, we hate those things for our fire trucks, right? The average speed, this per Secretary Hall, the average speed during busy season on Palm Boulevard is 22 miles an hour, right? We don't need speed bumps for 22 miles an hour. We need we need access, coming in and going out on Palm Boulevard. The speed was 35. She decided, it was not a city decision. I'm not against it, but she decided to lower the speed limit to 30 miles an hour. It's 25 miles an hour on 41st. Fire departments hate speed bumps, right? Personally, I'm in favor of enforcing speed laws. I don't care how you do it. Have people drive at or below the speed limits, enforce the laws that we have. There is I don't see any probability of having speed bumps. I do hope that we get better with Scdot at improving the crosswalks on Palm Boulevard and the warnings around those crosswalks so that people acknowledge that we need safety for everyone's families to get across those crosswalks.
And let me get back to the Alva Palms connector. What exactly is the city's plan to alleviate that traffic this summer?
The city doesn't have a plan to alleviate that traffic. There's an application called Beach Reach, and I would encourage anyone that hasn't seen it to look at it. It's a good application. There is, further work by Scdot with the cameras and all, and complicit with the city so that people, and by the way, I use that SC 511 app often when I need to go somewhere. People are going to recognize, like I said earlier, if you want to come to the beach, get up early and come to the beach, right? When that connector's backed up the Rifle Range Road, and 17, and you want to sit in your car for an hour to get across a bridge to hopefully find a parking place. Newsflash, if you're sitting that long, there aren't a lot of parking places available. I wish there were a solution to that. People are going to come to the beach, right? On a personal level, it's something that will come up to council in terms of free parking and access. I'd be personally much more favorable to the city opening up free parking in the lots that we own and eliminating more of the parking along Palm Boulevard or going to paid parking on Palm Boulevard, right? It encourages people to go. Frankly, there's no restrooms anywhere other than there and in Wild Dunes. It helps our local businesses and puts people, less time in the communities driving, looking for parking places. And, these are the options that council will look at. But in terms of cutting down on the number of people coming here, it's not feasible. That's a partially federally funded, bridge connector. The city has no abilities to control. And we get these questions all the time, Quintin. Why can't the city tell everybody that there's no more people can come here? Well, you know what? We are not a private island. We are not trying to privatize the island. We don't have an ability to privatize the island. And we all acknowledge that, part of the price for having the privilege of living on an island like this is we're going to have visitors. We just ask them to be respectful of the island, pick up their litter, obey the speed laws, park where they're legally allowed, and behave.
And
It's that
simple. Yes, sir. And one last question. Why did the city have a new revenue line in their budget for this year as a result of the planned installation of parking kiosks on Palm Boulevard?
because we intended this year to go to paid parking and we backed off on that plan. Right. You'll see it on the agenda for tonight.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a little bit ironic. We haven't pushed hard for paid parking. Like I said, the city's revenue's been largely fine. Everybody wants more money, but there's been a couple of stakes in the ground with the city, not raising property taxes if possible, and living within our means while handling big projects. Contrary to what you read in social media, this city, not other people, are funding the beach cleanups, the public safety officers. This is on the backs of the residents. S40 does permit other uses of collected paid parking money and would appear to encourage coming forward with a paid parking plan. I mean, I listened to the legislative discussions last week, and the discussion was paid parking, paid parking, paid parking. Well, they had more discussion on paid parking than we've had as a city lately, right? So what would you expect? You would expect Isle of Palms to look at paid parking, other beach communities to look at paid parking as a funding source for increased public safety needs. And we've had increased public safety needs. I mean, we get, I don't know if you looked at the numbers, but on an average weekend, we'll have 25,000 cars come over the connector looking for 1,700 parking places. So, yes, we have public safety needs and cleanup needs.
Randy Bell, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to the award-winning Quintin Close-Ups, and I hope to have you back. I want to talk to you more.
When welcome. You probably got more than you bargained for.
Well, thank you for your time. I really do appreciate it.
You're welcome. You take care and have a nice week.
Likewise.